Hello everybody. Today's topic is watershed and its management under the course Rainfed Agriculture and Watershed Management, coded AAG 321. In today's class, we will be discussing what is a watershed, what are the different kinds of drainage pattern in a watershed. Then we'll be discussing what are the different functions of a watershed, how many types of watersheds are there in India, what is the objective, and how does the deterioration of a watershed occur, and what different watershed management practices. So, starting with watershed, watershed is simply the geographic area through which water flows across the land and drains into a common body of water, whether a stream, river, or lake. Now, basically, if we see the typical shape of a watershed is a leaf like structure with different components. There are headwaters, there is confluence, and there is a mouth or outlet which finally drains the entire water from a watershed into a common body. So if we see, we basically each and every one of us we basically live in a watershed, and it may be of a bigger area or maybe confined to a rather small area. But more or less, everybody is confined within a watershed. Now, when there is flow of water in a watershed, it basically flows along the ridge line. The ridge line basically means the highest point, the line joining the points of the higher elevation in a particular watershed. And basically, this ridge line it divides different watersheds and distinguishes them from each and other. Now, if we see that in a watershed, basically the water comes in from rainfall, and if there is not enough water body to store the runoff water, by runoff water I mean the excess water that is getting runoff over the surface of land. So if there is not enough water body to store this water, basically this water is lost and we cannot utilize that water properly. So this watershed plays an important role in collecting all the runoff water together in a place, and then we can use that stored runoff water from rainfall for other purposes like applying life saving irrigation, or maybe coming up with other enterprises like fisheries, or maybe developing forestry in that land in an area where earlier there was water deficit. Now, talking about watershed, there are different kind of drainage pattern in a watershed. Basically, there are three types of drainage pattern when we talk about watershed. The first one is dendritic drainage pattern. It is characterized by tributaries and subtributaries, which particularly joins at an acute angle. By this, I mean that when there are substreams or smaller streams, they always tend to flow in the direction of the gradient. And when these small streams are flowing, they join with each other at acute angles, and finally, they all join into a much larger stream, which we can imagine as a kind of river. For example, River Ganga. It has several tributaries and subtributaries. So now, when there is excess rainfall, this runoff water, this water gets collected in the subtributaries, and finally, these streams merge, and finally, they drain out into Ganga. So this is basically the dendritic drainage pattern. Second form of drainage pattern, which we often see, is the trellis drainage pattern. This particular drainage pattern it forms in those areas where there are soft rocks and hard rocks. Now, soft rocks are more prone to erosion, so basically they form a kind of depression. And when the soft rocks are present in between two sets of hard rocks, so what happens is that the water tends to flow over these soft rocks. thereby forming a drainage channel. And basically, these are a more kind of parallel systems. Like the water movement is parallel until and unless they drain out into a common water outlet. The third form of drainage pattern is radial drainage system. It is made up of a pattern of stream flowing outwards. Now, compared to the previous two drainage pattern, this is a more particular kind of drainage pattern where we can see that the water movement is in all directions and also outwards. So what happens is that this is basically found in kind of undulating slopes or maybe hilly tracts where whenever there is heavy rainfall, this water moves in all directions. So basically this radial drainage pattern, the water flows down the slope of a dome or cone shaped up land. Now if we look at the stream order in a watershed, as I said earlier, there are several streams and substreams. So the smallest stream, it is delineated with the smallest number, or maybe we can say it as 1. Now, as the streams start joining with each other and they become bigger streams, so they acquire higher numbers, and by the time they reach the final stream, so the final stream gets the highest number. Now, why is watershed important? Watershed are mainly important because the surface water features and storm water runoff within a watershed ultimately drains to other bodies of water. So basically, whenever there is rainfall, not the entire amount of rainfall gets infiltrated into the soil. So some part of the water is lost in the form of runoff, and the important feature of the watershed is that these watersheds can help in storing all those runoff water and which can be used for protection and restoration purpose. Now, if we consider the boundary of a watershed in deserts and flat terrains where there is very little amount of drainage, the watersheds may be bigger, whereas in undulating and hilly terrains, the watersheds may be relatively smaller in size. Now, talking about the functions of watershed, so the functions can be divided into two broader heads. First is the hydrological function, second is the ecological function. So basically, the hydrological function of a watershed involves collection of the rainfall water, store the water in different water bodies, and release the water as runoff for maybe uh, better purpose or developmental purpose in the downstream regions or maybe other agricultural purpose. Among the ecological functions, a watershed provides conditions and sites for various biochemical reactions to take place, and it also provides habitat for the flourishment of flora and fauna of different kinds. Now, while classifying a watershed, so watershed has been classified into different categories and subcategories. If we consider watershed, the biggest fraction of a watershed is known as region, and in India there are total 6 regions. Each region can differ in size ranging from 25,000 to about 1 lakh hectare area. Now the region is further divided into basins. Basins are further divided into catchments, which are further divided into subcatchments and then watersheds. So a watershed, size of a watershed may range from 5,000 hectare to about 2 lakh hectare per watershed. And like this, we have 3,237 number of watersheds in India. So all these watersheds, if we combine together, a number of watersheds form subcatchments, a number of subcatchments form a catchment area, a number of catchment area forms a single basin, and combining few basins form a region. Among the six regions in India, one is the Indus drainage system region, second is the Ganges drainage region. That means all the area which comes under the Ganges drainage area. Third is the Brahmaputra drainage. Fourth one, all the drainage flowing into Bay of Bengal except those of Ganga and Brahmaputra. Fifth one is all the drainage flowing into Arabian Sea except the Indus drainage. And the sixth region is the Western Rajasthan region. There are also a list of basins, 34 basins given in the slide. Now, while delineating a watershed, each watershed is coded by numbers. For example, if you see the first example, there is a number given 1A, 2B, 3 small a, and 1. So this very first number, it indicates the region. So we know that we have total 6 regions. So this first number, this indicates the region of which we are indicating. The first number followed by a letter indicates the basin. First number followed by a letter followed by another number. It gives us the catchment, particular catchment under a basin. In this way, a total 7-digit number gives us the identification of a micro watershed. That means the first number, it gives the indication of which region with the micro watershed belongs. Second alphabet, it gives the idea of the basin. The third digit gives the idea of the catchment area. The fourth letter, it gives the notation about the subcatchment and henceforth. Now talking about the objectives of watershed management, like what do we want to do through watershed management? So the basic objective is controlling the damaging effect of runoff and soil erosion, thereby conserving both soil as well as water. Second objective is, once we have stored this runoff water, how can we use that stored runoff water for useful purpose? Third objective involves protection, conservation, and improvement of the land use in a more efficient and sustained manner. That means while we are conserving the soil and also conserving water, how beneficially we can use that excess runoff water for other efficient purpose. Other objectives involve rehabilitation of deteriorated lands to reduce the impact of flood peaks in downstream areas. That means if there is more amount of rainfall in the upstream area, so obviously it leads to a flood like situation in the downstream area. So if there is a watershed, that means the water has a particular drainage channel or storage area, then the risk of the downstream areas getting flooded becomes less. Moreover, while storing this runoff water, it also helps in recharging the groundwater, and through different enterprises, we can also lead to different kind of employment generation. So, talking about the watershed, we need to know the reasons why the deterioration of a watershed occur. So, the major reasons being anthropogenic activity like faulty agricultural methods, cultivation on sloping land, and excessive cropping. Second of all, improper management of forest land, that means too much of deforestation or thinning of plants, and faulty road construction leads to excessive soil erosion and thereby deterioration of a watershed. Likewise, mismanagement of grasslands, excessive grazing are also a reason due to which it promotes more rainfall runoff, thereby promoting soil erosion, and hence there is lesser and lesser amount of total groundwater recharge. Sometimes forest fires also result in deterioration of a watershed due to loss of vegetation as well as organic matter. Talking about deforestation, there is a practice of shifting cultivation we all know, where some people they tend to clear the forest and do cropping on that piece of land for a few years, and they again move on to a next piece of land. So while adopting shifting cultivation, unknowingly we destroy the productive vegetation and make the soil more prone towards erosion. Mining is also a major reason towards deterioration of watershed, as it exposes the slopes, destroys the vegetation, and exposes the soil towards more and more runoff. And among the other anthropogenic activities, population boom is a major reason that we have been shifting more and more agricultural lands into urban areas, or we have been shifting the rural areas towards more urban areas, and thereby leading to more deforestation and degradation of the soil. So what happens when a watershed gets degraded? This results in fast running water downhill. That means whenever there is a slope, the runoff speed of runoff water will be higher, and it leads to soil erosion and also sometimes washes out the crop. It reduces the agricultural production. It sometimes clogs the different drainage channels, and it also results in siltation of the rivers and reducing the depth of flow in the rivers. The streams get polluted, increased erosion and inundation of the land area, less storage of water in the water bodies, lowers the water table, and at most it increases the incidence of floods and drought. In India, there has been watershed program since 1970s. The, at the very beginning, the drought prone area program DPAP, as we know, it was initiated during 1973-74 with the objective of restoration of ecological balance and optimum utilization of land, water, and livestock. This was closely followed by the desert development program during 1977 and 78, which mainly focused on the restoration of the desert areas and also restored the ecological balance in those areas which was turning into desert areas. In 1986-87, National Watershed Development Program for Rainfed Agriculture came up, and this was mainly targeting to utilize the rainwater from both arable and non-arable lands with the help of watersheds, and with the help of that to increase the area under forest so that the source for fuel, fodder, and food resources would be enhanced. During 1986 and 87, also control of shifting cultivation program was initiated in order to reduce the tree felling and the deforestation, and simultaneously also provide socio-ecological balance. During 1989 and 90, integrated watershed management program was initiated with the help of World Bank, and this was a more integrative program to promote sustainable increase in agricultural production and to enhance vegetative technology of soil and water conservation for rainwater. During 1992, integrated wasteland development program was also initiated to restore the wastelands into cultivable lands. Now the watershed management practices. So it can be broadly classified under two heads. First, in terms of purpose. Second, being the method and accomplishment. That means from a watershed, for what purpose we are using the watershed. So in terms of purpose, it is to increase the infiltration, to increase the water holding capacity of the soil, and to prevent soil erosion. Now, the second step of watershed management, it includes the methodology. So by adopting which methods can we manage a watershed properly? So there could be two measures. One is the vegetative measure or the broadly, in broad sense, the agronomical measure, and second could be the engineering measure or the structural practice. That means in vegetative measure, we often change the management practice of a cropping with the help of which we check the runoff speed and thereby improve the infiltration of the water into the soil. Engineering measures, on the other hand, it involves reshaping of the land so that the water can be channelized for its flow to collect the runoff water into a water body or maybe reduce the flow of the water in order to prevent soil erosion. Among the different vegetative measures, it involves strip cropping, pasture cropping, promoting grassland farming, and also afforestation or maybe developing woodlands. Among the different engineering measures, it involves contour bunding, terracing, construction of earthen embankment, construction of check dams, construction of farm ponds, construction of diversions, gully controlling structure, rock dam, and providing vegetative and stone barriers. So, while we are talking about the watershed management, there are a number of factors which affect the management of a watershed. Among them, the first is being the size and shape of a watershed. That means earlier when we discussed, we said that the typical structure of a watershed or the typical shape of a watershed is a leaf-like structure. Now, it is not always necessary that the structure has to be perfectly leaf-shaped structure. Sometimes the watershed may be thin and long, or sometimes it may be circular. A long and thin catchment, it takes longer time to drain compared to a circular catchment. That means it has a more wider area. Now, depending upon the shape, it determines the speed of the runoff. A circular watershed would result in runoff from various parts of the watershed reaching the outlet at the same time. Compared to if the watershed is elliptical in structure, then the watershed having the outlet at one end having the same area as the circular watershed, the runoff will be spread over a much bigger area and it will take time, thereby reducing the chances of flood at a single moment or single peak of time. That means in a circle, if the watershed is more circular, the water will be flowing at the same time towards the outlet. Compared to if the watershed is elliptical, that means to reach the outlet it will take a much longer time. So the flood peak won't be same at the same point of time. It will be different based on the point from which it is reaching the outlet. So, elliptical watershed more or less reduces the risk of flood peak at the same time as compared to a circular watershed. Similarly, the size will help determine the amount of water reaching the river. If the watershed area or the catchment area is larger, so it will have a more potential for flooding compared to a smaller watershed area. Likewise, topography, if we talk about topography, topography determines the speed with which the runoff will reach the river. And it is very much clear that if the watershed is located on a steep mountain hills or hilltops, so it will tend to have a greater runoff speed as compared to gentle slope area. And here the ridge line plays an important role in demarcating the different watersheds from one another. Third factor is the density. That means the total length of the streams and rivers in a drainage basin, and it is divided by the total area of the drainage basin. So this ratio, it determines how well or how poorly a watershed is drained by a stream channel, and it is equal to the reciprocal of the constant of channel maintenance and equal to the reciprocal of 2 times of the length of the overland flow, which means that the total, if the length of the flow is more and the number of streams are more dense, that means it has a larger capacity to carry the runoff water and it will be less prone to flooding as compared to an area which has lesser density of streams or rivers. Now, slope of a watershed, obviously, what we were talking about earlier, slope of a watershed definitely impacts the momentum of runoff. Now, steeper the slope, more will be the outflow from a watershed. Gentler the slope, the outflow from the watershed will be more gentle comparatively. Also, the climatic characteristics have an important role in the watershed management. Here, the precipitation is the most important factor. That means if we get a huge number of precipitation, huge amount of rainfall in a very short interval of time, that means the rainfall intensity is much higher. That means there need we need to have more number of streams or more number of uh, vegetative or engineering measures to control the runoff flow. Whereas if the precipitation is equally distributed, then the chances for flooding is reduced. Now the amount and intensity of rainfall also determines that what will be the flow of the stream. If the rainfall we have a good amount of rainfall, the stream should be bigger in size to store that amount of water to maintain the flow throughout the year. But if we have relatively smaller number of streams with smaller size, it will impact the runoff flow and it will promote more runoff water resulting in flooding. So, in a watershed management where there is high intensity of rainfall, we need to have more number of streams in order to guide the excess water, runoff water. Now, talking about some of the watershed management structures, so among them it can be broadly classified under broad bed and furrows. So, this broad bed and furrows are very much common is very much common watershed management structure. It is laid between the field boundaries, and the main function of this broad bed and furrow is to control erosion and to conserve soil moisture in the soil during the rainy period. And these structures are more common in dryland areas and it is very efficient in controlling soil erosion and also acts as a drainage channel during heavy rainfalls. Contour bunds. These structures also help in controlling runoff velocity, and the contour bunds are basically these embankments which may be closed or open type, and their main function is to intercept the runoff flowing down the slope by an embankment. That means these contour bunds, they are made along a slopy land, and it intercepts the runoff flow and thereby reduces the speed of the runoff flow, and it can be laid up to in places where there is up to 6% of slopes. These contour bunds are very much efficient. Bench terracing is also very much popular in slopy lands, and the main function of bench terracing is it brings the sloping land. By cutting the sloping lands into different strips, it levels the land and it provides area for cultivation. And it is very much suitable for hilly region areas where the benches are made with inward sloping. And the, the main advantage of bench terracing over contour bund is that this bench terracing can be adopted in those areas where the slope is more than 6%. Now the microcatchments for sloping lands. The main function of this microcatchment is in situ moisture conservation and erosion control for tree crops. That means these microcatchments are basically used in plantation areas or in orchards. And these microcatchment areas can be created in slopes ranging within 2 to 8%, where the soil is basically light to moderate in texture. And finally, the check dam. This is constructed on small streams and long gullies formed by erosive activity of floodwater. The main purpose of check dam is it cuts the velocity and reduces the erosive activity of the runoff water. The stored water improves soil moisture and also simultaneously recharges the groundwater. So, concluding this presentation, I would like to say that each and every one of us lives in a watershed, which often we use synonymous with catchment area. So, the type of management activity that we carry out in a watershed management upstream, it determines the quality of the soil and the quality of the land in downstream. And with the increasing scarcity of water day by day and reduction in the groundwater table, this watershed will play an important role in recharging the groundwater and also storing the runoff water so that we can use it for agricultural purpose. With this, I conclude this class. Thank you.